In the wake of the battlefield disasters that have sent a wave of panic through Washington, the Trump administration is rapidly coalescing around a strategy of overwhelming economic warfare, with a clear consensus on a direct military response proving elusive amidst internal division. The White House has pivoted toward preparing what senior officials are calling the most punitive and comprehensive sanctions regime ever conceived. This move is seen as a multi-pronged effort to directly attack the financial and industrial foundation of Russia's war effort, to pressure Moscow into a ceasefire by threatening economic annihilation, and critically to allow the administration to project an image of decisive action and regain control of a narrative that has been dominated by Ukrainian military failure. The focal point of this new strategy is the Treasury Department, where Secretary Scott Bessent, in close coordination with Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick, is overseeing the drafting of measures designed to effectively quarantine the Russian economy from the global financial system. The internal discussion have moved beyond simply adding more names to existing lists. The plan now being finalized is a qualitative leap, aiming to create a level of economic pain so acute that it forces a change in the Kremlin's strategic calculus. The immense pressure of the Ukrainian collapse has fused the administration's economic and national security apparatus into a singular weapon, one they are now sharpening in anticipation of a confrontation that will extend far beyond the battlefield of Europe. The architect of this looming economic assault, Secretary Bessent and Secretary Lutnick, are working in tandem to construct a multi-layered wall of sanctions intended to be inescapable. Bessent, a figure from the world of high finance, is focused on severing the remaining arteries that connect Russia to international capital. His team is preparing measures that would impose full blocking sanctions on every significant Russian financial institutions, a move that goes far beyond the initial restrictions placed on the major banks at the outset of the conflict. The true innovation and the source of significant international concern is the proposed widespread application of secondary sanctions. Under this new framework, any foreign bank, whether in Zurich, Dubai, Hong Kong, or Istanbul, that process a significant transaction on behalf of a sanctioned Russian entity would itself face the threat of being cut off from the US dollar system. This represents a direct challenge to the financial sovereignty of other nations, effectively forcing them to choose between doing business with the United States or with Russia. Bessent's argument within the administration is that the time for ambiguity is over and that nations that have been facilitating Russian financial activity must be made to feel the consequences. His plan includes targeting the obscure small banks and financial holding companies that Russia has been using as cutouts to circumvent existing restriction. A testament to the depth of the Treasury intelligence gathering on Russian evasion network. Complementing Bessent's financial seize is the industrial and technological blockade being engineered by Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick. His department is conducting a massive expansion of the entity list and export control regulations, aiming to starve Russia's military-industrial complex of the critical components it needs to sustain its offensive. Lutnick's team has been meticulously analyzing captured and destroyed Russian military hardware, from cruise missiles to drones and communication systems, to identify the specific Western and Asian-made microchips, processors, and other dual-use technology that are still finding their way into Russia's arsenal. The new sanctions will not only ban the direct sales of these items, but will aggressively target the transshipment hubs in third countries that have become central to Russia's procurement strategy. Nations in Central Asia, the Caucasus, and parts of the Middle East will be put on notice that their status as intermediaries for sanctions goods will no longer be tolerated. Lutnick is proposing a technological iron curtain where the presumptions will be to deny any advanced technology to a list of designated Russian end users unless a company can prove beyond any doubt that it will not be diverted for military purpose. This effort is being coordinated with United States Trade Representative Jameson Greer, who is developing the diplomatic and trade leverage that will be used to ensure compliance from reluctant partner countries. The plan also involves pressuring international standards bodies and industries consortium to exclude Russian entities further isolating them from the global technological ecosystem. One of the most potent and controversial elements of the proposed sanctions package is a direct assault on Russia's energy lifeline. The administration is actively considering a move from the current often leaked price cap on Russian oil to a full embargo on its purchase by all G7 nations and a concerted campaign of pressure to force other major consumers to follow suit. This would be a high-risk, high-reward strategy. Opponents argue it is the single most effective way to deplete the Kremlin's treasury, which is heavily dependent on hydrocarbon revenues. They believe that while it would cause a significant short-term shock to global energy markets, the long-term benefit of crippling Russia's ability to wage war would be worth the price. This proposal, however, has ignited a fierce internal debate. Secretary Bessent, despite being a primary author of the overall sanctions plan, has reportedly expressed deep reservations about the full energy embargo, pointing to the high probability of gasoline price skyrocketing in the United States and Europe, potentially triggering a severe recession and undermining public support for the war effort. These Treasury analysts have modeled scenarios showing a global oil price spike that could cripple developing economies and create widespread instability. Pushing back against this caution is Secretary of the Interior Douglas Burgum, who argues that American domestic energy production can be ramped up to mitigate some of the fallout, framing it as an opportunity to reassert American energy dominance while simultaneously punishing Russia. The debate highlights the central dilemma facing the administration: how to inflict maximum pain on Russia without inflicting unacceptable damage on the US and global economies. The scope of the sanctions extend beyond finance and industry into the very logistic of Russian commerce. A key component of the plan is to cripple Russia's ability to export any commodity, from oil and grain to minerals and timber, by targeting the global maritime insurance industry. The United States and the United Kingdom jointly dominate the highly specialized market for protecting ships and their cargo. The plan is to make it impossible for any vessels carrying Russian goods to obtain adequate insurance, regardless of its flag or destination. Without this insurance, most ports will refuse to allow a ship to dock, and financing for the voyage would become impossible to secure. This would, in effect, create a maritime blockade of Russia without a single naval vessel firing a shot. This strategy is being designed to be implemented in coordination with the United Kingdom, and Secretary Rubio's office has already begun delicate negotiations with his British counterparts. The goal is to present a unified front that the global shipping industry cannot ignore. This would put immense pressure on countries like India and China, who have become major buyers of Russian seaborne crude, forcing them to either self-insure their fleets, a risky and expensive proposition, or curtail their purchases from Moscow. The sheer audacity of the plan, attempting to command the arteries of global trade, demonstrate the scale of Washington's response to the crisis on the ground in Ukraine. While the economic team fine-tuned their weapons, the proposed sanctions have become a major point of contention within the broader National Security Council. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, while publicly supportive of holding Russia accountable, has privately expressed deep skepticism that sanctions alone can solve the immediate crisis. His position, articulated forcefully in strategy sessions, is that sanctions are a tool that works over months or years, while Ukraine's military is collapsing in a matter of days and weeks. He is concerned that the intense focus on the economic response is serving as a substitute for the difficult and risky decisions that need to be made about military aid. Rubio continues to advocate for the immediate delivery of long-range ATACMS missiles, F-16 fighter jets, and Abrams tanks, arguing that only a dramatic shift in the military balance on the ground can stabilize the front. He fears that by the time the sanctions begin to truly bite, there may not be a sovereign Ukraine left to save. His view is strongly supported by Secretary of Defense Peter Hegseth, who sees the sanctions debate as a more comfortable, less risky path, while policymakers are reluctant to confront the possibility of direct escalation with a nuclear power. Hegseth's Pentagon is working on contingency plans to rush equipment to the front, but he feels his efforts are being hampered by a White House that is now more focused on Treasury Department press release than on the urgent requests from the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense. Further complicating the administration's calculus is the intelligence assessment being provided by Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard. Her agency's analysis suggests that Russia, having been under various forms of Western sanctions for over a decade, has actively wargamed a scenario of total economic quarantine. The intelligence indicates that Moscow has built up significant non-dollar reserve, reoriented its trade flow eastward, and developed domestic substitute for some key technologies. While Gabert's assessment does not suggest that the new sanction would be ineffective, it does caution that their impact may be slower and less decisive than their architect hopes. He has also presented the National Security Council with a detailed analysis of Russia's likely retaliatory measure. This includes specific threats of cyber attack against American financial institutions, energy pipelines, and port authority. The intelligence suggests that Russian state-sponsored hacking groups have already prepositioned themselves within critical U.S. infrastructure networks, waiting for the command to activate. Gabert has also warned that a full-scale economic war could push Russia into a tighter, more dependent alliance with China, potentially creating a powerful, unified bloc of revisionist powers that could present a long-term strategic challenge to the United States that would dwarf the current crisis in Ukraine. Her sober analysis has served as a check on the more optimistic projection about a swift Russian economic collapse, forcing the administration to confront the potential for a long-running economic conflict with unpredictable consequences. The international reaction to the looming sanctions has been mixed, creating a diplomatic minefield for Secretary Rubio. While the United Kingdom, Poland, and the Baltic states have signaled their strong support for a maximalist approach, core European allies like Germany and France are expressing extreme trepidation. The German chancellor has warned that a full Russian energy embargo will lead to the deindustrialization of his country, while the French president has reiterated his belief that a diplomatic off-ramp must be kept open, a path that a total economic war would effectively close. This division within NATO is precisely what the Kremlin seeks to exploit, and Rubio's team is engaged in a frantic diplomatic effort to forge a unified position before any announcement is made. The even greater challenge lies with China-US Trade Representative Jamieson Greer has been tasked with conveying a stark message to Beijing. Continuing to serve as Russia's economic lifeline will have severe consequences. The threat of secondary sanctions against major Chinese banks is a gamble of monumental proportion, one that could destabilize the entire global financial system. Beijing has so far responded with public denunciation of unilateral sanctions and quiet assurance to Moscow of continued support. The administration is now debating how far it is willing to go in confronting China, knowing that a miscalculation could trigger a trade war that would make previous dispute look minor by comparison. As Washington prepares to pull the economic trigger, the pieces on the global chessboard are shifting in unpredictable ways, setting the stage for a period of profound global instability. The sanctions intended to be a solution to the Ukrainian crisis are threatening to ignite a series of new economic and diplomatic conflicts around the world. Many of my listeners, like 70%, haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, and so many of you don't even know that you haven't subscribed. And that is actually what makes the show going. It's almost like you're making a donation to the show. So that's why I ask again and again, because it enables us to grow and grow and grow. And we're going for the long haul here. And listen, if this is your first time listening to World Global Conflict, you don't have to subscribe. You guys, your first one's on me. But if you have watched this show before, it's like you're a freeloader now. So all I would ask you is, if you have seen this show before and you like it, help me, help my team here. That subscribe and like button now. And we will continue to build this show for you. That I swear. Thank you to all of you guys who have subscribed. It means a lot to me. Thank you so much. That's all for me for today. I will see you soon. Bye for now.